Welcome to the Business Spotlight Series. I'm Rick Plaskett, a certified business and leadership coach here in Columbus, Ohio. And today my guest is Michael Farrell. He is the owner of Redstory. Today we're going to talk to him about the business, some of the challenges, some of the changes in the business that he's seeing right now, as well as his best practices, and share a little peek into what it's really like to build and operate a business. If this is your first time on the channel, please be sure to like and subscribe so you get notifications in the future of new conversations. Michael, welcome and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Rick. It's a pleasure.
My pleasure is going to be all mine and all our audience, I promise. After we just talked for a few minutes before we went on air today, if you would, Michael, give us a brief overview of your background and tell us a little bit about the business of what Redstory is all about.
Sure. Well, thanks for the opportunity to be here again. Redstory is an experiential marketing and event firm. We were founded in outside of Nashville, Tennessee, in Franklin, at the end of 2019. So there's a whole story there about what happens when you're in the event business and you go into a pandemic. But we're really a firm that is focused on creating human connections with a strategic approach of defining what data makes sense. What are the behavioral components around the attendee or the ticket buyer? How do you analyze spatial design, and how does that reveal what the creative needs to be? So that's kind of a brief overview of what Redstory is. You know, I started my career probably in experience in live events when I was a teenager, as a guitarist and as a songwriter, growing up here in Central Ohio, actually in Heath, Ohio. After graduating from high school, packed up with a couple other buddies from Licking County, and we jumped in a van and moved to Los Angeles in 1989, having no clue what we were doing, but had a desire to play music, see the world, and technically try to become rock stars. So, you know, that's kind of where my passion for live events and being in environments that people have an emotional connection to what's happening on stage started.
Super fabulous. Oh, this is going to be fun. I just love interviewing creative people because my limitations of creativity when it comes to any type of performance is volume up and volume down. That's the
Oh,
best that I can do.
there's creativity in everyone, Rick. I'm sure it's in there.
And you just have to have the time and have the mentor to be able to pull it out of you.
There you
But
go.
well, Michael, to set the stage for the viewers, give us a little bit of a background on the business right now. What's the ownership structure? Are you the solopreneur or do you have outside investors?
No, Redstory was actually founded by a private equity company and a family wealth office, who we were, myself and one of our other founding contributors, were connected with them in a previous business. They saw some opportunity to expand that particular business, which was also in the production business. It was primarily audiovisual rentals for international and national concert tours. There was an identification that I was part of that process of looking at how you take that expertise, the efficiencies that come around concert event touring, and apply that into the experience industry, and especially primarily with B2B, B2E, and B2C events, in a way that could really help elevate and solve the age-old problem, especially outside of entertainment, is what is my investment in an event going to return? So we're really founded with them with the dedication to solving that problem. But the primary ownership is a private equity, private family wealth office. Myself and one of our other founding contributors are minority equity partners in the business.
Fabulous. So, Michael, tell us a little bit about what the current role is that you play in the business. I mean, you gave us a full array of what the company does and where you do it and who your audience is, but let's get down to you personally. What's the role that you play in this business today?
Well, sure. That's a great question, Rick. Well, you know, to get back to the ownership structure, the primary owners of the business are not actively involved in the day-to-day operations. So we are tasked with we're tasked with creating the brand, creating the positioning, identifying what the differentiation is within the market, obtaining, prospecting, and closing opportunities. retaining those opportunities. So initially, when we launched in 2019 going into 2020, it was really determining what is our brand, what is our value proposition, and how are we going to differentiate within the event marketplace. So that was really kind of the founding objective that we had. And
Mhm.
that's where we really spent time in determining, what sets us apart from any other meeting planner, any other meeting and event agency, a certified meeting manager or a CMP, a certified meeting professional. And it was really the experiential component that is really going to identify those key components of data, behavior science, and spatial design. So once we founded and created that positioning and that brand and that approach, the next phase that I was charged with was client acquisition. So part of that is looking at, previous connections that I had. As any business knows, your sphere of influence is who you know,
Mhm.
and how do you leverage that appropriately. Secondly, it was how do we expand the awareness of what we were doing. And I utilized again what I was familiar with and had experience in within a tremendous commitment to networking within agent or associations within our industry, Meeting Professionals International, PCMA, ILEA, ASAE, the alphabet of all the associations. But I really did find that my commitment to being of value to these associations without asking for anything had the greatest returns on business opportunities.
That's awesome. So as you look at this in your role, give me just a kind of a breakdown of percentage wise, how much of your time is spent looking into the future, strategy, planning, goal setting versus the day-to-day of closing the deal and delivering the deliverables?
Boy, there's the perfect world, and then there's the reality. And I'm sure many of your viewers that are entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs understand that. The honeymoon period is when you're starting and you have this
Hmm.
vision and you see these opportunities. And with a small team, we started off, there was 5 of us. As those opportunities start to come to fruition, then you get into the operational function. The balancing act is how do you manage as the primary business development and client acquisition partner, to letting that go to let other team members kind of take those next steps. With many of these clients that we started working with, I was fortunate that I was connected through these associations or previous relationships. So sometimes those clients wanted, they wanted me around for the execution and the operational components of these programs, which I was happy to do. But I would say, starting off, it was 90% future
Okay.
cast, looking at those opportunities. I would say now in the position we're in, it's probably 50% of pipeline development, new business acquisition, 25% focusing on retention, which at the same time, in the back of my mind, is probably the most important 25% because we never want to lose an opportunity or let a customer down. We always want to make sure that we're exceeding expectations, and that we're providing value. And then that other 25% is the administrative daily grind of, you know, what's the P&L look like? What do the balance sheets look like? What do these
Right.
event budgets look like? Contractor negotiations. In a perfect world, I would spend 90% of my time on new business because that's what I love. And then, well, I should take that 75% on new business, 25% on making sure that the existing clients are good. But I also see that existing business and new business development actually do go hand in hand. Many
Mhm.
of the firms that we work with are very deep and very broad. We may work with an HR team or a sales team, but there's other functions and other business functions and units within these brands that we are not actually currently supporting their event or experiential needs or their content needs. So being able to spend time on your existing client, and understanding the full scope of what they're doing as it relates to the work that you do, I think is the key component to sustainability and future growth.
And audience, I want to pause right here and reemphasize as much as I possibly can. Michael has hit this not once, but 3 times, and that is paying attention to your current customers. I know that I have a number of restaurants as clients, and it just continues to amaze me how they completely ignore their current clients as
Mm.
just expected. I know them by name, but I don't nurture them. I don't market to them. And it's the same thing with every single business. Unless you've got a business that is a one and done, I'm put on a new roof, and unless there's a storm, you won't need another new roof for 30 years. Any other business that has any type of repeatability, part of your marketing, part of your time needs to be that absolute nurturing of your current customers. So thank you for pointing that out, Michael. I've got
Well,
a question for you. As you're looking at new customers, how much of your time in the marketing process and in the sales process is spent on educating them on what they don't know? You've got a very unique ability of putting all of that experiential and sensory type of personal experience on your part
mhm.
into somebody that probably doesn't look at that every single day. Walk us through
That,
that.
yeah, consultative strategy, consultative selling, especially in the markets we serve, these are complex sales, they're complex deals. And there's an opportunity for us to uncover what those core needs are, what those core challenges
Mhm.
are. But there's also the opportunity to act as a thought leader and encourage them to think of other opportunities. We have one particular enterprise client at this point that, due to some of the economic uncertainties that we're seeing it within their industry vertical, are looking at ways to reimagine some of the B2E, business to employee experiences, could look, to be good stewards of their money and their investors' commitment to their brand. They want to make sure that they're spending their money as it relates to experience and leadership development appropriately. Um, is it appropriate for us to do a 600-person 4-day experience at a hotel that's hundreds of thousands, which probably, by the time you include room, board, beverage, transportation, is a 7-figure experience? What we have done with them is said, we understand the position your business is in. Many position organizations are in these similar positions. So let's reimagine, let's go through a discovery process, which is one of the things that really differentiates what we do, to
Mhm.
determine what we can do that, one, will save money, secondly, can have as much or more impact, and thirdly, prepare the brand to reintroduce this large conference experience in 26 or 27, when some of the uncertainty within their vertical is no longer an issue.
Michael, you don't have any military background, do you? Because you just described to me, and I was living it all over again. I do, and you start out with the end in mind. What is the final?
Thank you.
I call it mission accomplishment or
Right.
terminal learning objective, and then work backwards from there and look at the differing ways to get to that mission accomplishment.
Well, Rick, while I personally don't have a military background, I was raised by my grandfather. My grandfather grew up in Dayton. He lied about his age at 17, signed up for World War II, and at 17 years old was a side gunner in a B-17.
Wow.
Right after his 18th birthday, he got shot down, and he spent almost 4 years in a German prison camp in Germany and in Poland. Was marched
Wow.
back and forth, nearly
Wow.
died. Um, After the war, had the opportunity to re-enlist since he was a POW and had a Purple Heart. He re-enlisted, became the Air Force. He was part of the OSI then for a number of years, Vietnam and Korea. So World
Wow.
War II, Vietnam and Korea, almost 43 years service to the country. And he was the biggest influence in my life and the greatest gift that I ever could have had, to have him as my father. So a lot of the approach that maybe I have to my business is really the result of what his dedication of being of service was, his of being dedication to the country. I believe that I need to be dedicated and of service to our clients, to our team members, and to the communities in which we work and serve. So that's probably where that kind of came from.
Michael, thank you so much for sharing that. And absolutely, you are blessed to have a grandfather that was able to share that with you, and you being able to capture those stories. That's a dying breed right now, and it's a dying experience in today's battlefield. There's many of my colleagues, I'm on support groups like you wouldn't believe. And there's a lot of them that don't have the ability to share those stories, and the stories that they do share um, are better off locked up sometimes. So the fact that you
Sure.
know what your grandfather went through and that has meaning to you, that's something to be cherished. And I congratulate you for that.
Well, funny story, one little side story about that. He made it clear to me. He said, Michael, the the service is an option for you. He said, as far as I'm concerned, I've done your time, but know that it's an opportunity. So before I graduated from high school, he put me in the car. We went and talked to a recruiter, an Air Force recruiter, and said, I want you to have all the information, but know that it's not anything that I have an expectation for you. It needs to come from your heart. And I kept that with me many years. And, there is a part of me that is like, looking back now that I'm in my 50s, that would have been something of value in my life, but I can always be a supporter and encourage individuals to be involved and support our troops in any way that they can. So
And again, Michael, thank you for sharing that story. That is absolutely heartwarming to me personally, and I'm sure to the rest of the audience as well.
that's awesome.
Let's shift gears a little bit. And you were sharing with me in our last conversation, looking forward in your business 3 to 5 years. What are some of the changes that you see happening?
Well, a couple of things. One, it's such a buzzword in our industry right now, and I've been to a number of industry conferences lately. I do speak for MPI and ILEA and PCMA, and I'm around other presenters, and AI has become such a topic, almost to the point where I don't want to hear about it anymore. But um, AI and the opportunity that is there to utilize it correctly can be a game changer. I see the value in it, but AI at the same time is never going to bring people together. It's never going to create a human to human context. And I think that it is actually driving opportunity for our industry while it is being disrupted currently by it. Um, so it'll be interesting to see how things play out. It needs to be like any other tool in entertainment. We use tools when we're tuning a PA in an arena or a ballroom. It is nothing but a tool. It is way smarter than I would be if I was sitting behind a console and trying to EQ a room. It is going to tell me what it thinks I should do. But at the end of the day, that technician that's behind that console and his human ears are going to hear things from a human perspective and not necessarily from the computer. And that's what AI has done. AI is actually a very useful tool in identifying potential markets for conferences. It can tell us, we can get more data than you would even need that's available through that for research. You can use it to define and create, run a show documents. All of that is really great to help you make templates. But at the end of the day, what we're seeing, especially with some organizations, is relying so much on that they're missing the true value proposition around experiential, around events, around human connection and bringing one-on-one people together. AI is never going to create loyalty. It's never going to create differentiation except for what it thinks that it knows up to that second. But the world keeps spinning. And so the the information on the internet is always constantly updating itself. And thirdly, it's never really going to create curiosity. It is only going to give you information. It is never going to make you more curious. So I think those are some of the things. One, obviously, economic uncertainty within the meeting and event space now is certainly a challenge. We are addressing that, like I said, with one of our current enterprise clients, looking for opportunities to make sure that we're being really great stewards of their investment and experience. Um, and I think those are kind of, some of those issues that we're certainly facing right now.
Awesome, awesome. Well, on the subject of AI, Michael, I don't know if you've read the book or it's been referred to you, but the one that I have read that just absolutely popped out was the AI-driven leader.
I thank you
And
for that recommendation.
the AI-driven leader, I'm sorry, can't remember the author, but you know how to title and search for that. But I loved the fact that it explained AI as a tool, and it's up to us to understand how to use that tool.
Mhm.
And it's only as good as the input that we give it.
Yeah,
Uh, but the thing that I really truly loved about this was it didn't talk about which AI, what to use,
right.
where to use it, what not to use it. It talked about as a tool to the leader, this is what it would be. And in my mind, I kind of envisioned Captain Kirk on the Starship Enterprise bridge, and he's circling a new planet, and he turns to the computer and says, "Hey, computer, tell me everything about the civilization. And for first contact, how should I dress? And what are some of the cultural things that I should consider when making first contact?"
Yeah,
And
boy, that's great insight. It's interesting because I do think there's value in being platform or software agnostic. For example, we saw, especially coming out of COVID in the event business, all of a sudden everybody had to get to like figure out a way to communicate with groups of people. And obviously, at that point, we basically had Zoom. We might have had a version of Teams. We might have had WebEx events or whatever, but there were not there weren't these all-in-one in the box platforms. What happened between 2020 and 2022 were a bunch of people got in the event business because they were actually software developers that saw money. And what happened is all of a sudden there were so many platforms, and then clients were like, are you an expert in X platform, B platform, C platform? And we truly became agnostic because the platform doesn't make any difference. And we can
Mhm.
teach someone how to use a software, an application, but you can't teach people to create an experience that actually, whether it's online or in person, that, like I said, creates curiosity, delivers, brand awareness, that drives sales revenue, that builds teams for an HR initiative. So those things again doesn't really matter. Same with AI. There's four or five, like different models that you could use for if you're trying to craft a white paper, for example. There's other ones where you're trying to create videos. I've seen some amazing videos that have been done on with AI that in some ways they're beautiful, they're compelling, but they're still not the same as a filmmaker with a great camera and a great eye. So it's like you said, it's a tool, and I think that's a great book, and I'm definitely going to check it out because I think I could get some value out of it.
Awesome, awesome. Hey, as you were sharing that again, Michael, give me an idea. How would you describe your leadership style in business, and has it changed over the years?
Oh gosh. I try to be humble first and foremost. I try to remain curious and open. And I think that those three components have stayed consistent. Um, I have had to learn um, to be more clear at times on expectations as we've grown, as we've worked with larger groups, especially as it applies to individuals that I've felt that I am nurturing to help them grow. I get pretty emotionally vested in the people that I work with and want to see them succeed. Um, and it's learning how to manage the appropriateness of encouragement and redirection and how you do that in a way that doesn't frighten somebody off. At the end of the day, I look at what we're doing. You know, I'm not in a hospital. I'm not, this isn't brain surgery. This is events. We have a responsibility to our clients. I have a responsibility to my team. And I also have learned that it's okay to ask someone if they're finding value in what they're doing. And if they don't, encouraging them to find what does, whether it's with us or with somebody else.
That's fabulous. I really appreciate that. I'm sitting there, and as I was listening to you, Michael, I was envisioning, I bet one of your major challenges is to present an event and an experience that resonates with all of the different generations, and they
Sure.
all have separate things. I know that personally, oh, geez, it's probably been 30 years now. Beloit University in Beloit, Wisconsin, every single August, they put out the mindset list. And the
Mm.
concept is this is the class of whatever, 2030. They were born in, 2010. And to them, stuff like the World Trade Center never existed. They've always had cell phones. They've never had a flip phone, and to bring that in and to ground on some of the things that we grew up and we had as experiences that they just don't have. And to be able to communicate with where they are coming from is always a huge challenge. I know that I've got a number of clients that are in their 20s, and I am constantly having to take a look at the agenda and how to coach them and change because they don't want to hear a boomer. They can't even relate to half the things that I say. So I have to be really intentful to be able to communicate with them where they are right now.
Boy, that's really great insight, Rick, and I fully agree with that. One of the things that I have focused on as it relates to leadership development is to ensure that I do remain curious and that I listen. I guess I'm also fortunate that I've got kids that range from 20 to 32. So I still have a couple that are pretty younger. I've got some that are in college now, and I've got some that have recently moved on to college. And certain things where I could take, when you're a parent, you could apply that to work, especially when you're leading a team of some younger individuals. I won't call one of my children out, but one of my children actually one time I had an opportunity. I was working on a project, and it was for Ohio State University actually, and this particular he was a dean of one of the programs. My daughter was actually in school. Oh, I just called one of her out. And the dean said, "Hey, I'm looking for someone to help, almost as an internship." And he gave me the card and said, "Have her call me." And so I gave her the card and said, "Hey, you need to reach out to this guy and call him." She said, "On the phone?" And I said, "Yes," and it's funny because we still tease her now, and she's super successful in her career, and I couldn't be more proud. But it's part of, you know individuals of that age. They don't want to pick up the phone. They want to talk to somebody. They want to email or they want to text. But you have to be able to communicate with your adult voice. But I've seen that even with some of the younger team members that we have, especially some of the freelancers that we work with. They're just like, "Oh, shoot me a text." I'm like, "No, we don't do business over a text. We're going to do business, in person. We're going to document things in writing on email, and we're going to follow up." But I understand it. I get it. So I try to be very cognizant of when it's appropriate to communicate in a way that they're most comfortable with. And when it's not, say, "Hey, I'm going to reach out to you by text, but we need to schedule a time," or "I am sending you an email and I need to see a response." But it is challenging.
If you look at technology today, there's two proofs that God does have a sense of humor. One is the fact that we're still calling these phones.
Oh, I know.
Okay.
That's true.
And number two is that little icon on the top left-hand side of all computer screens that are a floppy disk for saving. Okay. The younger
Yes.
people don't even know what a floppy disk is. So
Yeah.
that's just proof that God has a sense of humor.
Yeah. I've got probably some pretty cool stuff on floppy disks and, you know, old computers laying around somewhere. I probably forgot.
And you'll have to find a floppy disk and then find something that will actually
Yeah.
transfer it onto current technology. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we have really covered a lot of ground today in today's conversation. And for those of you that are watching, I'm highly encouraging you to save this and come back more than a few times. Michael has given us some great nuggets, and we've just had a little bit of fun here. So as we wrap up, I'd like to hit a section here that's called rapid fire questions. All I'm looking for is there's a series of questions here. Just what's top of your mind? You ready for this? I promise
I'm
it doesn't
ready.
hurt.
Let's
Super.
go.
All right. Michael, what do you consider your key to success?
Differentiation.
Super. What's one piece of advice that you give a business owner today?
I never give up.
And what's a book that you're reading now or that you would recommend for the audience to listen or to watch?
And I'm glad you mentioned your restaurant clients, Rick. Unreasonable Hospitality, the best book. It is,
Yes.
and I had the chance to see Will at a conference a couple weeks ago and had a chance to have a quick conversation with him. Just absolutely incredible. And it applies to whether you're a hospitality, restaurant, service business, any business owner, any leader. I made my kids read it. I said, you need to have a hospitality first mindset.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. If there was one area of your business that you could choose for immediate improvement and wake up tomorrow and it would be exactly what you want it to be, what would that one area be?
Oh gosh, what a great question. I would say vendor negotiations.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So before we hit the last question, I've asked you an awful lot of questions today, Michael, and I want to give you the opportunity. If our audience found value in what you shared with us, or our audience wants to be your next most valuable customer, what's the best way of them contacting you?
One, I'd recommend LinkedIn. I mean, a great place. I think we all need to be connected and active on LinkedIn. It's Michael Stephen Farrell on LinkedIn. Secondly, you could reach us at redstory.co. Or second, reach out to Rick. Rick and I are connected. He can connect us. And Rick, thank you so much, by the way. I appreciate what you're doing. I can tell that your coaching services are probably incredible, and we'll have to have another conversation after this.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So here's the last question. Besides me and my interviewing abilities, what do you find most inspiring?
Oh boy. Most inspiring is when you get a room full of people that have shared goals and shared values, and they can experience something wonderful and moving that makes a difference in their community together. Um,
Awesome.
and that can be
Love it.
from everything from a conference, a concert, to this weekend in my neighborhood, they had the farmers market, and our whole neighborhood here in Lewis Center got together with a new farmers market. And it was just shared experiences, 100%.
That's great. That's great. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your journey. And to you, the audience, thank you for watching. We're inspired by listening to this interview. And if you are as well, keep watching for the next ones to be dropped. Folks, make it a great day and bye for now.
Thank you.